Karen's guards killed my dog on my land. Then I showed the town who she really was. My dog bled out 6 feet from our back porch. It happened fast, too fast to stop. One moment he was barking at the strangers, cutting across our lawn, and the next, he was yelping, staggering back, his golden fur dark with blood. My wife screamed, my daughter froze, and I ran, but it was already too late. Charlie was gone, and the men who shot him, they weren't police, they weren't animal control, they were HOA security. Only we weren't even part of an HOA. We moved to Oak Springs 3 months earlier. Quiet, rural, mostly families and retirees, the kind of place where people wave at each other from porches and neighbors borrow sugar without knocking. We bought a single-story ranch house on 2 acres, nothing fancy, just enough space for our daughter to grow up without concrete under her feet. My wife, Angela, had picked it for the view. I'd picked it for the peace. Charlie loved it, too. He was our 12-year-old golden retriever, rescued from a kill shelter back in Texas. Mellow, loyal, protective in the softest way, more bark than bite. But he knew our girl's laugh and my truck's engine and the mailman's route like he'd mapped the world for us. That peace didn't last. It started with a note on our mailbox, typed, no name, no return address, just your grass exceeds acceptable length. Mowing is required within 48 hours to avoid fines. I stared at it for a while. Our grass was clean, maybe an inch long, no weeds, and we weren't under any HOA. I double-checked before we bought. Angela thought it was a prank, but then came the next one. Unregistered animal. You are in violation of Section 3A Pet Ordinance, followed by a third. Your porch furniture is not community compliant. Remove immediately. That one was hand-delivered, left in the seat of Angela's favorite rocking chair. By then, I was angry. I asked our neighbors if they were getting these notes. Some nodded, most looked down. A few whispered about the HOA under their breath, like it was a ghost or a curse word. Karen runs it, one woman said quietly. Don't ask questions. Just keep your head down. I didn't keep my head down. I found out who she was within a day. Karen Blevins, self-appointed president of the Oak Springs Neighborhood Oversight Board. Only, and the board wasn't listed anywhere in the county records. No election, no public charter, no registered bylaws. But Karen acted like she owned the entire valley. White Escalade, frosted bob haircut, a voice that always sounded like she was disappointed in you before you even spoke. I met her the next Sunday when she pulled into our driveway uninvited. You're new, she said through a cracked window, sunglasses still on. I'm also not under your jurisdiction, I replied. She smiled like a cat who'd cornered a mouse. Everyone in Oak Springs answers to the HOA, whether they realize it or not. According to the county map, our house isn't in the district. She tapped her nails on the steering wheel. Maps can change, and then she drove away. The next week, we started seeing trucks. Black, unmarked pickups cruising slowly past our gate. Men in dark polos and aviators stopping to take photos. One even walked along our property line with a measuring wheel. Angela was terrified. I told her not to worry, that these people were bluffing, pretending, trying to scare us into compliance. But then came the fence. They built it in the night. A long, ugly metal chain link fence that cut across part of our open pasture. No notice, no permission, just concrete footings and a sign that read, Oak Springs HOA Perimeter. Do not cross. Charlie hated it. He paced along it every morning, barking, like he knew it didn't belong there, like he knew it was wrong. And then, 3 nights later, it happened. We heard the barking first, then the voices, male, aggressive, barked commands like they were kicking down a door. I flew out the back door barefoot, flashlight in hand, just in time to see Charlie lunging toward 2 men dressed in tactical gear. They were on our land, inside our fence line. One of them raised a rifle. I screamed, no. He fired. Everything went quiet after that. Charlie collapsed. Angela ran out and dropped to her knees, screaming. My daughter stood frozen in the doorway, clutching her stuffed bear like it could shield her from what she'd just seen. I threw myself between the shooter and my family. "You just killed my dog." He raised his hands like he was the victim. Animal was off leash. We were enforcing HOA security protocols. "You don't have the right," I yelled. "We had a report of trespassing. The animal was aggressive. You were the trespassers." The sheriffs came 20 minutes later. The two security men had vanished by then. So had Karen. I filed a report. They nodded, took photos, told me I could maybe pursue a civil suit, but there's no guarantee. One deputy said, "These private HOA enforcement groups operate in a gray zone. They're mercenaries," I snapped. "And they just murdered my dog." He looked down. "I know. I buried Charlie the next morning under the oak tree he loved to nap beneath." My daughter drew a picture of him with angel wings. Angela didn't speak for hours. That night, I sat on our porch, gun in my lap, tears in my eyes, rage in my blood. Karen had drawn the line, and I was going to burn it down. I didn't sleep the night we buried Charlie. I sat in a lawn chair with my rifle across my lap and a thermos full of coffee gone cold beside me. The wind howled through the trees, rustling the loose dirt we'd shoveled over our dog's grave. I kept waiting for another truck, another flashlight beam, another man in dark glasses with too much arrogance and too little authority. But no one came. Not that night. Instead, the silence stretched so long it began to feel like mockery. I woke to a text from Matt Landry, a neighbor 3 properties down, quiet guy, Army vet, kept to himself since his wife passed. It just said, "Saw what happened. You're not alone." Attached was a photo, Karen, standing outside the HOA clubhouse, which I now realized was just a rented trailer off County Road 3, talking to a man with a clipboard and a sidearm. Same guy who shot Charlie. Same HOA security logo on his vest. Karen was smiling, like it was business as usual. Angela begged me to let it go. "They killed our dog," she said, voice cracking. "But we still have Lily. We still have each other. Don't escalate." But that's just it. I wasn't the one escalating. The moment Karen hired armed contractors and sent them across private lines, this stopped being a neighborhood dispute. It became a war of principles, and I don't walk away from those. I started with public records. The Oak Springs HOA wasn't listed with the state, no incorporation, no tax ID, but a separate LLC was Oak Springs Community Assurance Group, registered under the name K. Blevins. A search of the tax filings showed security expenses, property reallocation research, and a mysterious item labeled canine remediation. That last one broke me. She'd planned it, budgeted for it. This wasn't a rogue guard. Charlie's death was approved in a budget. I made copies, dozens, then I went door to door. Some slammed them in my face. Others just looked away. But just a few invited me inside, locked the door behind me, and whispered the truth. They fined me for painting my shutters without approval. Said if I didn't remove my Trump flag, they'd initiate a community cleansing process. They told my husband they had the right to search our shed for hazardous materials. It was intimidation masked as governance, and Karen's security team. They weren't just enforcing fake rules. They were gathering intel, pushing people, testing how far they could go. Then came the letter, hand-delivered in a sealed envelope. To the occupants of 122 Greystone Trail, you have been found in violation of Articles 5, 9, and 11 of the Oak Springs Community Standards Charter. Infractions include unregulated animal containment, threats toward community officers, public disruption of neighborhood order, remediation options, remove unauthorized structures, i.e., porch swing, fence extension, submit letter of apology to board, relocate within 14 days to avoid escalation. It was signed Karen Blevins, President, Oak Springs HOA Executive Security Committee. No logo, just a wax seal with a dog's paw crossed out. I scanned it, posted it to Facebook with a caption, "They killed my dog. Now they're trying to evict my family and no court, no warrant, just fear." Is this what community means now by morning? It had 400 shares. By afternoon, it had $12,000. By nightfall, it hit national news. Reporters came, local first, then regional. By day 3, a CNN van was parked across the street. I did one interview, told the story calmly, clearly, showed them Charlie's grave, the letter, the budget sheet. Angela cried on camera. Lily clung to my hand the entire time. Karen released a statement. The community hired private contractors to ensure peace and order. Isolated incidents are being exaggerated by individuals with anti-governance agendas. She even filed for a restraining order against me, claiming I was inciting anti-communal violence. The judge threw it out within hours. But Karen wasn't done. On the 4th day, she hosted a neighborhood town hall inside a rented church gymnasium. Cameras weren't allowed. So I went, alone. I sat in the back, arms crossed, watching as she strutted across the floor in heels too loud for the room. Change is hard, she said, but it's necessary. And yes, some animals, some attitudes cannot coexist with progress. Someone stood up and shouted, "You murdered a man's dog, security dragged him out." Another stood, "This ain't North Korea." Karen order, she barked, "or you'll be cited." That was her mistake, because someone, not me, filmed the whole thing through a crack in the side door. And when she said, that mutt came at my officers, and I'd do it again. It hit the internet like wildfire. The next day, 800,000 views. By the weekend, 1.6 million. People from all over the country sent messages, letters, donations. One message read, "I buried a dog too because of a power-drunk HOA. Enough is enough. You're not alone." That one I printed and framed it. But the most important message I got, it came from inside. An anonymous email. No name, no IP trail. Just, "You're right. I work for her. She's planning something bigger. I can help." Attached a blueprint of Oak Springs with certain homes marked in red. Mine was one of them. The map changed everything. It was a satellite view of Oak Springs. House plots neatly numbered, street names in faded gray. But what mattered weren't the houses, it was the colors. Red for Phase 1 Reclaim, yellow for Compliance Watch, green for Partner Properties. My house, bright red. So were 11 others, including the single dad on Pine Creek Lane and Mrs. Langston, the retired school teacher who ran the local book club. The yellow homes were all folks who'd refused to pay Karen's phony maintenance fees. The green ones, that was the worst part. They were her loyalists, people who'd accepted HOA rebate offers and private security benefits in exchange for access to backyard gates, shared security footage, and reports on their neighbors. It was surveillance. It was strategic. It was a hostile corporate takeover disguised as community improvement. And it was illegal. Angela broke down when I showed her the map. "I thought we were just being targeted," she said. "I didn't realize we were part of a plan. That's how she wins." I told her, "She isolates us, makes us think we're alone so we don't fight back." But what does she want? What's the end game? I didn't know. Not yet, but I was going to find out. I printed a dozen copies of the map. Then I started knocking on doors. First up, Matt. He took one look and muttered, "I knew it." She tried to buy my property last spring, said I'd make triple market value if I sold within the quarter. When I refused, the fines started. Next, Mrs. Langston. She tried to ban our book club. She claimed it was a subversive gathering. Who even says that Third Terrace on Willow Drive? They told me my home insurance was void if I didn't register with the Security Council. I thought it was real paid 3 months before I realized no such council exists. That was the moment it clicked. Karen wasn't trying to run a neighborhood. She was trying to drive people out, and she had help. I went back to the map, ran a search on the LLCs connected to the green-marked homes. Every one of them was partially owned by a development firm based out of Fort Worth Westward Expansion Partners. Their website advertised rural revitalization through community acquisition. Buried in the investor pitch was a phrase that made my blood go cold by strategically converting non-compliant residential zones into managed communities. WEP maximizes long-term value with minimal legal interference. They were flipping entire towns using fake HOAs, intimidation, and forced compliance to make homeowners desperate enough to sell. Karen was their puppet, and our neighborhood was just another acquisition. That night, I called Lynn. She's an old friend, former county investigator, took early retirement after blowing the whistle on a zoning bribery ring 2 towns over. I sent her everything. She whistled through the phone. "You've got yourself a classic case of weaponized bureaucracy. I've got dead dogs, armed trespassers, and now corporate fraud. What I don't have is authority." She paused. "Let me make some calls." The next day, Karen struck back. I woke up to find my driveway blocked by 3 SUVs. Same men, same black uniforms. This time, they weren't bluffing. They handed me a thick envelope marked "Final Notice." Inside was a letter claiming we were in open violation of relocation mandates and that unlawful occupants would be removed within 72 hours by order of the Oak Springs HOA Municipal Enforcement Group. There was no such thing, but they were betting I didn't know that. Angela cried again. Lily locked herself in the bathroom. And me, I finally got mad enough to do what I'd been avoiding. I went public. I scanned the letter, took a photo of the SUVs, recorded a video, no script, no edits, just me standing beside Charlie's grave, holding the red map and looking straight into the camera. I told them everything. The fake citations, the trespassing, the lies, the death of our dog, and finally, the real reason this was happening, corporate land theft under the mask of community order. I ended with this: Karen didn't kill Charlie by accident. She killed him because he was loyal, protective, unafraid. They want us to feel powerless, like we have to accept this, but we don't. This is our land, our homes, our voices, and we are not leaving. I uploaded it to YouTube, then to Facebook, then Twitter. Within 12 hours, it had 2.3 million views. By the end of the day, over 5 million. Then the tide turned. First came the calls. People from across the country, lawyers, journalists, victims of similar HOA scams. One woman in Florida said, "Same thing happened to us, but we didn't fight back. I wish we had." Next came the legal help. Pro bono firms offering cease and desist letters, class action templates, FOIA request support. Then came the trucks. Neighbors who'd been too scared to speak stepped out of their homes with hammers, chain cutters, spray paint, taking down every HOA compliance sign they could find. Matt and I organized the movement. We called it Operation Linebacker because we weren't crossing lines anymore. We were pushing them back. Karen issued a statement that night through her press liaison, aka her niece Oak Springs has fallen victim to misinformation. The security hired was for the safety of all residents. All enforcement actions were fully authorized. But that lie didn't stand, because Lynn called. Her voice was electric through the phone. "Feds are in. They're launching a formal investigation into Karen, westward expansion, and the whole damn scheme. You did it, but I wasn't done, because this time, I wanted Karen to feel what we felt: exposed, powerless, cornered." When the federal investigation went public, Karen vanished. Not literally. She still lived in that oversized farmhouse with her iron-fenced rose garden and her private community enforcement vehicle parked in the driveway. But she stopped making appearances. No more HOA meetings, no more clipboard rounds. Her usual security goons were gone, too likely told to lay low before they brought more heat to the operation. It was the quietest I'd seen Oak Springs since we moved in. But it wasn't peace. It was the eye of the storm. The Department of Justice began its audit of westward expansion partners within days. Thanks to Lynn's contacts and the evidence I dumped online, they had everything Karen's shell company transfers. Security hiring invoices. Even internal emails with subject lines like red zone evictions and compliance pressure strategies. The agents were shocked not just by the boldness, but the scale of it all. Oak Springs was one of 4 test communities, 4, and they'd all followed the same pattern: establish fake HOA with legal-sounding name, issue escalating fines and warnings, hire security to increase psychological pressure, force sales at reduced prices, sell to partner developers, start again. It was reverse gentrification, weaponized, and Charlie's death had become the flashpoint no one could ignore. The neighbors were fired up. Operation Linebacker took on a life of its own. We weren't just tearing down fake signage and documenting violations we were organizing. Mrs. Langston drafted a real community charter. Matt coordinated neighborhood patrols unarmed, with cameras. A local civil rights nonprofit helped residents file formal harassment claims. A group of teenagers even made a website called exposingkaren.org that compiled every bit of public data on the scheme. And in the middle of it all was me, the man with the dead dog and the video that lit the match. Then came the subpoena. Karen was ordered to appear before a federal grand jury in Denver. Her lawyer tried to delay. The court denied it. Public pressure was too high. Protesters had already begun showing up outside the HOA clubhouse trailer, holding signs that read, "Karen didn't comply with human decency. You don't need a badge to be dangerous. Community doesn't mean control." I stood outside the courthouse when she finally arrived. She wore all beige trench coat, scarf, oversized sunglasses, as if hiding behind colorless fabric could protect her from the storm she'd summoned. She didn't look powerful anymore. She looked cornered. Inside. She pled the fifth more times than I could count, but it didn't matter, because one of her own flipped. A contractor named Josh, mid-30s, hired to train the armed guards, gave full testimony in exchange for immunity. His words: "We were told to be aggressive, not violent, but dominant. If someone pushed back, we escalated. The dog, we were told it was uncontained and threatening, but it wasn't. The guy just wanted to make a point." He choked up after that, said he didn't know it would go that far. He'd been a failed cop. Karen gave him a second chance, but she'd also given him orders, and that made it a conspiracy. Karen was indicted on racketeering, wire fraud, impersonation of law enforcement, trespassing with malice, animal cruelty, criminal conspiracy to defraud homeowners. When the charges dropped, the neighborhood erupted. People cried, hugged, laughed for the first time in months. Angela baked 3 dozen chocolate chip cookies and gave them out on Lily's wagon. Someone set off fireworks. And I knelt beside Charlie's grave and whispered, "We did it, buddy." But it wasn't just about justice. It was about rebuilding. The state offered funding to reestablish Oak Springs as a legal, community-owned residential zone. No HOA, just a citizen council, voted in, fully transparent. We held the first election in the park, fold-out tables, ballot boxes made from cereal crates. Matt was elected head of the council. Mrs. Langston ran the budget committee. Lily and a few other kids made signs that read, "Real neighbors, real choices." And me? They asked me to be public liaison. I declined, not because I didn't care, but because I'd done my part. Now it was time for others to lead. Angela and I finally got a new dog, a rescue, muted brown coat, big eyes, nervous at first, then settled in like he'd always been meant to fill the gap Charlie left. We named him Justice. Before Karen was officially sentenced, she agreed to sit for one last deposition required under federal order to close the RICO case. I watched the video when it leaked. They asked her why she built a fake HOA, why she used fear, why she thought she had the right. She smiled and said, "People like order. They'll take fear if it comes in a suit." That was her legacy, and it was burned into a file forever. I stood at the county fairground 6 months after Karen's sentencing and watched a kid in a Superman hoodie tie a blue ribbon around Justice's collar. He wagged like he'd won the lottery. To him, it was just a treat and some clapping. But to me, it was a victory. Not because he replaced Charlie. You don't replace dogs like Charlie. But because we'd found joy again in a place that once smelled like fear. Karen was sentenced to 21 years, federal. The judge didn't flinch. The prosecutor didn't hold back. And the people of Oak Springs, they finally exhaled. It wasn't just about the fake security, the intimidation, the LLC shell games. It was about something deeper: control, fear, that quiet kind of rot that starts with rules written on paper, but ends in blood spilled on a backyard lawn. The trial changed more than our town. It changed laws. Within a year, Colorado passed the Neighborhood Enforcement Transparency Act, making it illegal for any residential association to hire private armed contractors without county-level registration, accountability reviews, and public consent. Other states followed. Our story became a case study in law schools, an ethics module in criminal justice programs, a cautionary tale in city council seminars. But more than anything, it became a story people remembered. I was invited to speak at a panel once: Community Power and Abuse in Suburban Systems. Fancy name. Glass pitchers of water and metal chairs. Boring as hell. But during the Q&A, a woman stood up, maybe late 40s, dressed like she came straight from a double shift, and said, "I just want to say thank you. My HOA tried the same scare tactics last year, but I saw your video. I knew what to do. I pushed back, and they backed down. That made every sleepless night, every scream, every grain of dirt on Charlie's grave worth it." Oak Springs is different now. Better. We still argue about garden beds and whether fireworks should be banned after 10 p.m., but it's honest, democratic. Nobody threatens to cite you. Nobody hires strangers with rifles to walk your lawn. And the red map, it's framed in the community hall, right under a plaque that reads, "We draw the lines now." As for me, I still wake up sometimes with a jolt, thinking I hear boots in the yard. But then I see justice at the foot of the bed, tail wagging, ears perked, still alive, still home. And I breathe. I tell Lily bedtime stories about Charlie now. How he used to chase squirrels like he was on a mission from God. How he slept with his nose under our porch swing every summer. How he stood between her and danger the night those men came. She always asked the same question at the end: would he do it again? And I always say he already did. Has your community ever faced intimidation by those in fake or unchecked power? What would you do if someone crossed the line on your land? Speak up. Share your story. Let's build neighborhoods that stand for respect, not control, because silence, that's where tyranny begins.